Hi everyone, and welcome to the next instalment of my build of Hobby Boss's Panzer 1 Aus A in 1/35th scale. As you can see from these slides, we're now going to be looking at the Buntfarbenanstrich camouflage German scheme. Apologies for my pronunciation, but I hope that's okay. Basically, it's the camouflage scheme that the Germans used between 1927 and 1937, using the three colours of yellow, brown, and green. So, if that's something of interest, then please feel free to grab a chair and let's go do some modelling. So first off, the whole of the model was primed with Mr. Surfacer Mahogany. Great fan of these primers. Create a fantastic solid surface for which you can then move on and do your acrylic work with. As you can see from this still, all items were primed with this particular primer. And we're going to be using AK acrylic colours for the camouflage scheme. And we're going to be using Jay's work camouflage mask. Now I think this is for the Turan tank, but I'm going to be adapting it for this particular build. So it was a matter of just measuring out the areas that I was going to be putting on for the Panzer, and then cutting that to size, and then using the masks accordingly. So first off, the whole of the tank was covered in buff, and this would be the base to which all the masks would then be added to. So use the top ones for the lower hull, and the bottom masks there were for the top, as you can see here. It was quite a job getting them all on, and I was glad that I hadn't added on all the tools because they probably got broken. But once I was happy with the masks, I then added the dark brown colour. And then once that was remasked, I then added on the green. So there was a little bit of touching up needed here and there, but all in all, I was really pleased with how it turned out. Now, the actual top of the turret, that had to be done in pure white. Now, you can put a decal on, but I found it a lot easier just to quickly put the black cross on using dry brushes and Vallejo black, and just mask off the area, and then just very carefully add on the paint through dry brushing, as you can see here. Now, you don't have to wait for this to dry. Once you've actually finished applying the paint, you can just quickly take off the mask, and then once that has dried, you can then remask and do the other cross as well. But a very easy and basic way of doing things, and saves all the fuffle of having to do decals. And there we have it finished. Very pleased with how that turned out. So as you can see, the camouflage pattern has come out well. The turrets, yeah, not too bad. Probably could have done different colouring here and there, but I was really pleased with how it was looking. I've started to add a little bit of detail painting here with the wooden blocks and the lights, and also with the tools and the hose, which was all done in dark rubber. And we've dry brushed the bottom with some light colours and had a little bit of a mess around just to try some different things out, which is always the good thing you can do on the bottom of a tank. So altogether, really pleased with how this was heading. And here's a couple of stills so you can see the camouflage pattern in more detail. And as you can see, the same processes was applied to all of the other items. Here we have the all of the wheels, the covers for the exhausts, and also the tow cable. As for the actual exhausts themselves, I tried a different method which came out really well. Where I just laid down a basic layer of rust acrylic and then just added on different rust tones using the speckling effect. I was really pleased with how that turned out, and then added a little bit of black on the exhaust end, and the actual hose was done in dark rubber as well. And here are a few more of the parts of the bogies and also the hatches that will be added onto the rear of the tank. And here we have the tools as well, which were all hand painted with Vallejo. Then Everything on the main tank was covered in a gloss, and this was in preparation of the decals. I went for the marking of G for obvious reasons, being for Grandad. There was a large G at the front and back, as well as near the turret. And then once that was all done, it was a matter of starting to apply some of the pigments. So first off, we're going to be doing the lower hull. The pigments that I use is a large selection of different shades of light colours, from coarse to fine, and different makes as well. And there's just a matter of gently applying it with the brush and getting it into all of the areas where you want it. Try and stain near the top, and then put more of the mask near the bottom end. And then this will be fixed in with thinner from Tamiya. Now the reason I use thinner is once it's dried, you can still manipulate and work with it. So therefore, anything that you're not too happy with, you can always change. And just using speckling gives you a nice finish, and also allows it to spread out and to adhere the pigments to the actual model itself. That's for the upper part, and then as far as the lower part where there is more of the actual pigments themselves, then it's just a matter of very carefully just dabbing, allowing the thinner to spread across the pigments and fixing it all into place. And there we have it once dried. As far as the bottom goes, I was just having a bit of fun there. That will all be cleaned up later. But really pleased with this as the first layer. Obviously, more layers will be added. And as I said earlier, the great thing about using thinner is that you can clean off the any loose parts of the pigments. Now, be very careful when doing this because thinner and acrylics do not go together, so you will be taking off some of the paint. So be very careful with how you do this particular operation. But what you can do is using that principle, you can then start to drag some of the pigments down to create some really nice effects. And also what you can do is if you, on the fenders here, just lightly wet the area and then immediately add some pigments on. This will give you a really nice dust base to work on. Now need to leave that to dry fully, and then once dry, then use a slightly damp brush with thin on. Do not over soak the area, otherwise you'll have all kinds of trouble. And then as you clean the pigments off, make sure you continually wipe off any excess. And basically what you're doing is starting to remove a little bit of the paintwork and the pigments, which will reveal that lovely hatch line pattern. And as you can see, this was one that was done earlier, and really pleased with how that turned out. Now, while you are doing that with the thinner, you have to be very careful doing this. So if you're not too confident, I would suggest you don't do this form of chipping. But what you're going to be doing is taking off a little bit of a layer of paint, as you can see here, with the thinner and the brush around all the raised edges, and that creates that fantastic, nicely worn, weathered chipped look. But again, you must be very careful. It's very easy just to take all the paint off your model. So, with the main part of the tank paint acrylic work done, I turn my attention to the tracks. Now, using the full tracks, we have the left-hand side ones and the right-hand side. Now, with these particular tracks, because they're so small, and it is soft metal, it is very easy to bend. So you must be very careful when putting the links together and also to clean them up, because as you can see here, it's quite easy to squash them together. And then if you straighten them out and apply any type of pressure to them, they're going to snap quite easily. So please be careful when cleaning these up. I use my drill with the 4mm drill bit, and then you just need to go in, clean out the pinholes. It is a laborious job. I actually do about 10 links per day. So by the time you get to the end of the build, all of the tracks have been done. And also there'll be a few little spurs that need to be sanded down. Very easy, because as I said, this is soft metal. Then what we need to do, I use a tongue depressor with some double-sided tape on. And this is an ideal way of keeping all of the links together when you're putting them together with the wire. And as you can see, you just use your tweezers, stick them in place onto the tongue depressor. This also keeps them nice and straight and even, because what you need to do next is to obviously thread the wire through the holes, and this is a good way of making sure that the all the holes line up, as you can see there. Now, as far as the actual wires go itself, it's very important to try and keep them very much the same length, so you know whether they've gone fully into the track when putting them in. Now, I'm fortunate that with my snips, the actual height of the snip is the correct length for the track, so it's just a matter of going through and cutting them to that one particular size. Once that's done, then we have the fiddly bit, especially when you're trying to do this on camera. But yeah, trying to thread through. If it does get stuck, it's usually because it's not pushed down enough or not lined up. But if you do have one that just does not want to go through, you may have to re-drill out the middle again. Despite all the hard work, it is worthwhile doing this process. So once we've done that, what we need to do is get the cocktail stick and get a little drop of CA glue, and you can just see it shooting down the hole. Do this all the way along, making sure that each wire has a blob of glue on it. Then what I do, I leave that overnight, and then the following day I just wiggle it just a little bit, just to free up any of the excess glue that may have gone further down than needed. And this obviously then gives you the idea of how flexible and how workable it is using these full tracks. Then what you need to do is obviously to snip off the ends. Now there's two ways of doing this. You can either cut them really tight to the track and then make your own pin covers and stick those on. Or as I do, I just cut them a little bit shorter to the track, and then I will actually go back and actually sand the actual end of the wire down to the track link, and that creates a nice little um, pin itself. So just for showing on the video, I've stuck one on there. You may want to do it if it's for competition. Just does tidy it up. And there's the one that I've just sanded down. So the choice is yours, what particular look you want to go for. And then finally, before we start painting, we just need to take off some of the seam lines on the side of the track. And then they'll all be ready for painting. And there we have two lengths. I've done 88 links. I haven't put these on the tank yet, so I don't know if 88 links is enough or too much. So I'll let you know in the final video. So again, using the same Mr. Surfacer primer. As you can see there, I think that's not too bad. Obviously, it's going to be on the inside, so probably not going to be seen a great deal. But again, if you want to go for the plastic caps, that's entirely up to you. So once the primer is dry, I'll just go over with some burnt umber from Vallejo and just give it a bit of a brush on the front and on the back. This is one of the advantages of using the mahogany primer. And then once that's dry, I'll then go over the raised edges with Panzer Ace's Light Mud. As for the tracks, it's all about layering, adding different layers of colour. And as we'll see in a moment, different layers of pigment. As for the underside, we obviously have to show where the tyre wear is. So I use dark rubber down the front, or should I say the centre, and then each of the teeth I use metallic steel, and that gives you a great version of how the wear is shown from the wheels. I was really pleased with how that turned out. So next what we do is the pigments. As I touched on earlier in the video, I have different pigments for different colors. So I use like 5 or 6 coarse to fine, lights, and then medium colors, and then also the very dark ones as well. So that's all ready for each build for as and when I need it. So for these tracks, we're going to stick with the light colors because we're going for that nice dusty look. So very carefully making sure that none goes on the inside because we don't want any dust, because that's where the wheels will be wearing everything. And once both sides are done, very carefully turn it over. And then we'll do the same again on the top. No need to go over the overboard with pigments. Just need to do a light dusting all the way over. Now this time we're using lacquer thinner. Now the reason we're using lacquer thinner is this stuff will dry rock hard. So you got to be sure that you're happy that what you're doing is, because next day you'll struggle to take any of the pigments off, which for tracks is the ideal, is what you want. But it does dry in rock solid. So this is how they now look. Really pleased with how that turned out. And as you can see, hardly any pigment coming off at all. And that all that leaves now is to do some final weathering using some oils. So what I've done, I've just given it a raw umber wash. That brings out all of the highlights with the oils. And those were left to dry, and that's the final look that I'm going to be going for with these tracks. And I may do a little bit more pigment work, colouring once they're actually on the vehicle. But all in all, really pleased with how that's turned out. So there we go, everyone. We're at the stage now where we're starting to do the weathering. I'll go into more detail on that on the final video when we do the final reveal in a couple of weeks. All that leaves me to say is many thanks indeed for popping in and having a look at my current update. Many thanks to all of my subscribers, old and new, and happy modelling.